Welcome back. This is tutorial number 17 of the Foundation Theory Radio course. This tutorial is going to be on regulations. The regulations for the Foundation license are a subset of the full regulations. If at some time in the future you decide to upgrade to a standard or to an advanced, you will have to do the full regulations, but for the Foundation it's a subset of those regulations. You'll do a 25 question multiple choice exam. That exam will contain both regulations and theory, and you'll do your practical exam as well. The amateur radio regulations for all levels of license, Foundation, Standard and Advanced, are contained in the document you see on screen. It's called the Radio Communications License Conditions, Amateur License, Determination 2015. And the compile date of this one is 29th of April 2020. Now, it's a fairly, and because it's such a clumsy long title, it's normally just referred to by the fraternity as the LCD, the License Condition Determinations, LCD. And it's a fairly long document with a lot of stuff in it that you don't really need to know because you can look it up. So you'd never want to try and learn the LCD, but you need to learn the important regulations, and if it's something you don't know, you can refer to the LCD. Also, studying for, you're only going to do a subset of the regulations in the Foundation, but later on, if you study if you want to upgrade to standard or advanced, you need to learn the full regulations. I don't recommend studying the LCD. It's long, it's full of stuff you don't need, so get a course from Res on regulations, and that will just pull out of the LCD the things that you really need to know. As a Foundation operator, you can have a 3-letter call sign, anything in the range from AAA to ZZZ. Only Advanced can have a 2-letter call, but Foundation, Standard and Advanced can have a 3-letter call. So your call sign really doesn't describe the class of operator that you are, the class of license that you've got, because Foundation, Standard and Advanced can all have a 3-letter call sign. Only Advanced can have a 2-letter call sign. It might seem strange as I've just written harmful interference. What is it? Because one would think that perhaps all interference is harmful. But harmful interference is defined by ACMA, and the Act and the regulations. Harmful interference is defined as interference to a licensed radio communication service. So that could be a courier company with a 2-way radio. It might be a cellular telephone site. It could be any land mobile radio service. Any radio service which is licensed, and if you produce interference to that service, that's called harmful interference. So it's interference to any licensed radio communications service. Why is that important to you as a radio operator? Because if you cause harmful interference, you are obliged to, under the regulations, to stop transmitting. So if you cause any interference to a licensed radio communication service, that is called harmful interference, and you are obliged to stop transmitting. It doesn't matter whether it's your fault or not your fault. You're not admitting any guilt or anything like that. It's not about that. It's about the fact that a licensed radio communication service has precedence over you, and if there's interference, the amateur station must cease transmission until that's resolved. Now, I have to say to you honestly, that rarely happens. It's really going to happen to you. Interference to a television receiver is not a licensed radio communication service. So if you were interfering with a TV or a clock radio or a broadcast radio or a sound system, for example, then you are not obliged to cease transmissions. However, it's a really good idea to be diplomatic, particularly with your neighbours. And if interference does occur, you may be able to do many things to alleviate the problem while it's being resolved. And it's most likely not going to be your problem. It's your problem because you've got to help resolve it. But it's very good, particularly with neighbours, to be diplomatic. And if you can reduce interference by reducing your power, or if you've got a directional antenna, turning your antenna in a different direction, or just temporarily modifying the hours that you transmit so that you cause the least amount of problems with your neighbour. You can talk to more experienced radio amateurs that might be able to help you with the interference. That is usually lots and lots of help from old hand radio amateurs out there willing to help you with interference problems. But if it gets a real sticky situation and there's no way out of it, it's gone belly up and the neighbour's not cooperating, well then you might have to contact the regulator, the ACMA, or better still, get the neighbour, the one who's got the problem with their TV or their sound system, to contact the ACMA. There is one interference that can occur frequently, and that is in areas of poor TV reception. Often you'll find underneath the antenna will be on a high pole or mast, and that's a big giveaway that it's a poor TV reception area. And you might find there's an amplifier. There's a TV amplifier just under the antenna or somewhere on the mast. That's called a masthead amplifier, and they are susceptible to being overloaded by amateur transmissions. It's not your fault. I've had that happen, and the only way I could resolve it, I could have just walked away from it, but I wanted to help my neighbour, and I bought them a better masthead amplifier. But I didn't install it. I didn't want, if the antenna came off and fell through the roof, I didn't want to be responsible for that. So harmful interference is interference to a licensed radio communication service, and if that happens, you are obliged to cease transmissions until the problem is resolved. And it's unlikely you're ever going to have a difficulty like that. Suppose that you communicate regularly with a amateur radio friend in Germany, so you're both radio amateurs, and next to you is a neighbour who's also knows someone who lives close to your friend in Germany, and your neighbour says to you, when you're talking to Schultz on the radio next time in Germany, would you ask him to pass on a message to Klaus that I got his Christmas present? Well, that's a third-party message, because the radio amateurs are passing a message on behalf of a third party. And it's okay to do that, provided you don't solicit it. You can't spruik, to pass third-party messages. You can't go and get business to pass third-party messages, so you mustn't solicit it. And also, the country where the third-party message is has to have a third-party agreement with Australia, and most of them do. So it is okay to pass third-party messages provided you don't solicit for it, you don't advertise that you're passing messages to get business or whatever, and the country that you pass a third-party message to has a third-party agreement. Third-party messages can also be done inside the country as well. You know, you might communicate with a radio amateur in another state, and your neighbour wants you to pass on a message to his neighbour or something like that. So you can pass, in most cases, we do have third-party agreements with most countries, and you can pass a third-party message. The maximum transmitter power for a Foundation licensee is 10 watts peak, irrespective of the mode that you're using. You can do an awful lot of DX work just with 10 watts. It means you have to focus very much on your antenna and the efficiency of your antenna. But if say you had an antenna with a gain of 3 dB, that means the antenna will double the power. And that's called the effective radiated power. So if you have an antenna with a gain of 3 dB, the effective radiated power would be 20 watts peak, because 3 dB is a doubling of power. So the antenna has a gain of 3 dB. You will effectively be using 20 watts. And if you had 6 dB, well, that's a doubling of power twice. So double 10 to get 20, double 20 to get 40. It's fairly difficult to get up to 9 dB, particularly with HF antennas. But if you could, and you can do it on UHF and VHF rather easily, get gains of 9 dB, that would be now another doubling, and that's 80 watts peak. So your transmitter power is 10 watts peak, all modes. I've just put a slide on the screen that shows the frequency limits of the Foundation license and some of the bands. But you'll get to know the names of these bands. This is the 80 metre band. This is the 40 metre band. This 7.1 to 7.3 and 7 to 7.1. All of that is the 40 metre band. This is the 15 metre band, the 10 metre band, the 2 metre band, and UHF, which is 70 centimetres, 0.7 of a metre. It's called the 77 metre band though. Now you don't have to remember those frequencies. If an assessor asks you what are the frequency limits of a particular band during an assessment, then you can open up the LCD and read it. What some assessors will do is say, if I were to ask you, what are the frequency limits of a particular band, where would you go to find out? And the answer would be the LCD, the License Condition Determinations. And where would you get the LCD? You would get it from the ACMA website. And quite often, a couple of questions like that will satisfy an assessor, because they're not really assessing you on your ability to read. They're assessing you on your ability to use the right document to find the right information. Distress calls. The distress call on radio, not just amateur radio, but any sort of radio, is Mayday, 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 and this is your call sign 3 times. So my call sign's VK2DQ, so if I was calling a Mayday, I'd go Mayday, 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 this is VK2DQ, VK2DQ, VK2DQ. And a Mayday call is given where there's grave or imminent danger to safety of life. It could be a ship sinking at sea. It could be an aircraft in trouble. It could even be someone travelling in a vehicle and they've had an accident and they've got a radio of some type. Could be an amateur radio, it could be another type of radio communications, and they've had a serious accident or been part of a serious accident and someone's really badly hurt. Probably if you're on the east coast of Australia, you probably use a telephone, but if you're out in the middle of the Simpson Desert, then you might call a mayday. There is no emergency. There's no emergency call on radio. The emergency call is mayday, 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 mayday. And it's only when there's grave danger to life or large property that you would call a mayday. If you hear a mayday call, the best thing is to listen and see if someone more appropriate than you answers. I mean, if you're a radio amateur, you really don't have an awful lot you can do except take down the information from the person giving the mayday and pass it on to the proper authority. But the best thing to do at first is to wait and listen and see if someone better placed than yourself responds to the mayday call. If no one responds to the mayday call, then you are obliged to. You've got a civil responsibility to reply to the mayday and do your best. Take down, find out what's wrong, who they are, where they are, their location, what the problem is, how many people it's affecting, and as quickly as possible pass that on to any authority. It might be, the quickest thing might be to dial 000. If you're not sure what to do, just dial 000 and say, well, radio outlet, I've just received a mayday call on this frequency. And they will look after that. If you're listening around on the bands and you hear a mayday and it's not on an amateur radio frequency and no one responds to that mayday and it's not on an amateur radio frequency, you can transmit on that frequency. All the rules are out the window. When there's a mayday going on, you don't need a license to transmit, you just transmit. But again, you would wait and see if there's someone better placed than you to offer assistance. But if no one else is there, then you're Johnny on the spot and you've got to do your best. Suppose it's a fairly urgent situation. You might be at sea. You might have say 10 souls on board, and you've run out of fuel. Well, you're not sinking. There's no imminent danger to life. You've just run out of fuel. So you wouldn't use a mayday call in that situation. In that situation, you could justify the use of the urgency call, which is pan, pan, pan. Just pan, 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 and your call sign. 3 times is the urgency call, and when people hear that, they know it's urgent, and everyone listens. And if you hear that, you listen too, and you see if someone more appropriate than you. I mean, it doesn't apply to foundation amateur radio operators, it applies to all amateur radio operators. If you hear a mayday or an urgency call, you don't jump in and respond to it. You listen first, and you see if there's some authority that's going to respond that's better placed to deal with the situation than you. So an urgency call, pan, 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 is one level down from a mayday. Mayday takes priority over all radio transmissions. Next in line is the urgency call, pan, 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 where there's no immediate grave danger to life. Under the licence condition determinations, it is your responsibility to identify your station at the beginning of a transmission, and then every 10 minutes in a series of transmissions. So if you're having a long conversation with someone on radio, approximately every 10 minutes, at least every 10 minutes, you should be announcing your call sign. So at the beginning and the end of a series of transmissions, and every 10 minutes in between, announce your call sign. Now, the other countries have different rules on that, so don't think they're being slack. There are some countries that only require station identification every 30 minutes. But for you, for all classes of license, station identification is required at the beginning and the end of a series of transmissions and every 10 minutes within. Now, if there is an interference problem and the regulator, ACMA, gets involved, ACMA may direct you to perhaps not transmit at all, or they might direct you to use reduced power for the next week or 2 weeks, or to cease operations on this band and that band, but you can use these other bands. In other words, they might vary the conditions under which you can operate, and the purpose of that is for them to investigate interference. They might ask you to keep a logbook. I mean, it's not a requirement for a radio amateur to keep a logbook. It is a requirement for a club station to have a logbook, but not an ordinary amateur station. But because they're trying to resolve interference, they might get the person receiving the interference to keep a logbook. They're not a radio amateur, they could be a TV viewer. So an ACMA inspector would say to that person, I want you to keep a logbook of the interference, and might say to you to keep a logbook of the interference. But they may also direct you to stick to other conditions as well. Conditions in power, frequency and time of operation, whatever. ACMA has a right to do that under the Act, and of course you really don't have a choice. You have to cooperate, but try and make their job easy for them. They're not going to be narky and do it to you just to have a go at you. They're trying to resolve a problem, and you are helping them by restricting your operation according to their wishes. It's a breach of the regulations to pass secret messages over radio. So if you and your mates say make up a code that only you understand and use it over radio, no one else can understand it, including the regulator, then that's a breach of the regulations. Secret messages are not permitted. Foundation radio amateurs can use data modes, and they are encrypted, but they are known encryption, encoding and encryption methods like data modes like PSK31, RTTY, and many other data modes all have an encryption, but that's a known public encryption, and that's not classed as a secret message. The secret message is something that you make up with one or more people that is secret, and you can pass traffic without anyone knowing what the content of the traffic is. I think it's a little bit of a leftover from the Cold War myself. Probably about time it was done away with. But anyway, who wants to send secret messages anyway? It is your responsibility to make sure that no unauthorised person can have access to your amateur radio station. That doesn't mean that your children couldn't go into your amateur station, or a visitor couldn't go into your amateur station without your knowledge. It means they can't operate it without your consent. It's not enough just to... You must secure your station in such a way that it cannot be operated by an unauthorised person. So that could be a family member, it could be a visitor to your home. If someone gets access to your station and uses it, then you're the Joe Blade, you're the monkey that gets into trouble, not the visitor. So it's your responsibility to make sure that your station is not used by an unauthorised person. If you've got a visiting radio amateur and they've got a certificate of proficiency, they can use it within the limits of their own license. Or if you supervise someone, you could supervise your children on the radio. That's quite okay. You could supervise your spouse on the radio. You can do that, but you've got to secure your station in such a way that no one can easily go in and press a microphone and cause problems with it. If you change your address, your residential address or your station address, then you must notify the change of address to the regulator, which is the AMCA. Now, a radio amateur can operate away from their station for 4 months without changing their address. So if you're just going on holiday, that's quite generous. 4 months for a repeater. A repeater can operate away from its designated location for a week. But an ordinary amateur radio operator can be away from their home address for up to 4 months. Now, if you change your address, then you must notify. So if you change your domicile address, then even if the 4 months doesn't matter anymore, you've changed your address, you need to notify ACMA that you've done so in your residential and your station address. Well, that's the end of the foundation theory course. You've still got the practical to do unless you've already done it. I wish you well with your study, and I wish you well with your exam. You'll end up with a certificate. This is an older certificate, this one. They used to put your photograph on the certificate. They're not doing that currently, but that might change again, and the photograph might end up going back. But good luck with your studies. Good luck with your assessment. You can always ask your assessor, because a lot of candidates are worried about the practical. If you watch these videos on the practical, you really don't have too much to worry about. But you could ask your assessor to give you a dry run if you wanted to, if he was willing to do that, if he or she was willing to do that. But I hope you've enjoyed this course, and I wish you well and good luck with your assessment. Cheers for now. This is Ron, VK2DQ 73.